Hi, thank you for coming. Actually, my name is Jindřich Skeldal, with just a small twist. Um, virtual reality. So far, virtual reality was a bit a disappointment. It doesn't sell well, and nobody can blame people not buying it because virtual reality is expensive, it's heavy, it has low resolution. To lots of people it causes motion sickness. And when you look at sales numbers, for example HTC Vive, it looks like only people who own HTC Vive are just the developers that are trying to make some breakthrough. Even if virtual reality is under expectation, I still believe it has a future because it is a very exciting disappointment. It is still fascinating. The chance that it can gives you is beautiful. For me, when I start, actually I have 20 years background in game development, so I came into virtual reality from game development. So when I start thinking about how to use virtual reality, the game was my first thought. But in the same time, I knew that I don't want to use same patterns. I mean game design patterns to design a video game. I actually don't want to use it to do classic first person or any other shooter video game. What I think that suits virtual reality well is to give people an opportunity to live another life in virtual reality, to give them a chance for a small amount of time to be someone else, to experience something else, simply to put more lives into one physical life. And a theater, then I came with a theater idea because theater itself is a profession that gives you a chance to live more lives in one physical life. So I started to do a game and sort of experience in virtual reality that gives you an opportunity to feel what it is like to be an actor. In my speech, in first half of my speech, I will introduce the project. I will explain what it is about, and in second half of speech, I will talk about how we did it, how we approach it. So, Theatre VR, what it is about. You simply take a virtual reality headset and you are staying on stage in a theater where you can choose a play that you want to play, then you choose a role that you want to play, and then you are saying your lines, making gestures, moving around the stage, picking items, and using stuff, and while other roles are driven by computer. This is a very basic idea. So where you can choose a different plays, but it is still experience for one player. We also. I forget to say that partly it is something what we already did, but most of things that I will explain is a vision that we want to implement in the future. We have a playable prototype that you can try somewhere here in the building. that contains last scene from Hamlet. It's about 6-minute experience, and it's played like in a way like that I just introduced. But in the future, we plan to implement multiplayer, where more players can join one digital stage. Any of your friends can choose a different role, and then you are playing on one stage together, saying lines, while the rest of roles is again driven by a computer. If you have enough friends, or if you have more other players, you are not obligated to play this prefabricated plays. You can make your own play, you can make your own production and play whatever you want. So when we implement something what we call massive multiplayer, but it basically means that people can join also auditory and watch your performance. So they can watching in real time, and because the theater is about the energy between actors and people in auditory, they can react somehow to your performance, and they so you can see it in real time, and this idea and of theater is complete. You can also make a video footage, and you can also stream it, I don't know, to YouTube or Twitch. What I described at the beginning is something what we called arcade mode. It is basically it is based on QuickTime events, what is a game design pattern known from video games. It's usually something that you need to make very simple action in very short period of time. Usually press a button in 1 second period to make some action to make game continue. In our case, those QuickTime events are lines that appear like a scrolling text that scrolls from down, and when the text is between 2 thin bars in the middle of the screen, you press a button, and this is how you say line. Gestures that you make by hand with your controllers, so they there are hands that appear in front of you, transparent glowing hands, and you need to put your hand inside this again in a short period of time. You have also full body gestures, what means with current hardware we are able to track your position, also your height, so you can stand up, kneel down, or even or sit or lie down. So again, there is a transparent silhouette of your character, and you need to repeat what he is doing. There is a props manipulation, so when you need to take a cap, in our case, from the table, the cap starts glowing. If you need to put it on the table, there is a silhouette of an item, and you need to put it on the right place. And there are also movements. Movements actually, I mean movements around the stage. At the beginning, I came with this idea because I saw that many people are feeling motion sickness, and I am one of them. So the idea behind the theater also came from the limitation that the technology brings. So I came with the idea of theater because you can play theater on a limited space. but you still need to solve movements somehow, because you usually, if you are lucky and you have enough space in your room, you play on a square that is 3 to 3 meters or maybe 4 to 4 meters. But for the prototype, we made a 3D model of a real theater. It is actually a real theater in Brno, and it has the size of the portal is like 10-12 meters, so we eventually need to solve a movement somehow. We started, we go through several iterations because it wasn't still perfect, and it is still not, but at the beginning we started with teleportation that is used in Valve the Lab some examples, so you can point at some place and you press a trigger and it teleports you. We didn't want to move with a player because this is the moment when you feel motion sickness most. So we started with this one, but it was a bit unplayable because when you need to move, you need to look around, find a place, point, and click, and this is one of things that can really distract you, because what we wanted is to make the experience as real as possible. And every time when we add something into the realistically looking environment that is not real, it distracts you because it tells you you are not in real space. So it wasn't good. So I came with an idea that we simply track movement of actors from motion capture, and after each meter we put footsteps on the ground, and then with the same method that I'm using here with this clicker, you simply click as many times as many steps you see. It was actually good and playable because you need not to find the teleporting target, you simply need to click. But as we have a very realistic environment, when people saw these footsteps, they simply start walking on them. And it is 12 meters, and after, I don't know, 30 seconds, everybody forget that he or she is in virtual reality, and actually believe that they are on the stage in theater and start walking, and usually they are leaving the room, and it wasn't good idea to use it like that. So in final iteration, we simply start moving with people automatically, so we are teleporting them automatically to places where they need to make their next performance. What usually works, but is still not perfect. On the contrary, there is another play mode that we want to implement, and it was part of original idea that it was something that was with the project from the very beginning. It is something what I really want to do, because arcade mode is still some sort of simplification, not simulation of the reality. On the contrary, this realistic mode is more like a simulation. You are on the stage and you can do whatever you want. Literally, you can go wherever you want, you can use any item, you can say whatever you want. But if you are not following script, you ruin your colleague's work. And this is what I wanted to do from the very beginning, to change an attitude of a player that is inside the game. Because usually, when you are playing a game, you are looking for a reward that comes from outside. You want to count killed enemies, you want to see how many coins you collected. You're simply looking for a reward that comes from outside. And why? Because we are used to do it in our all life. When we were young, our parents say us, you are good, did your first steps, and you are good, you wash your hands after you came from outside, and so on. And then we came to school, and we were rewarded by numbers. So we really want to be rewarded by numbers. But I think and I believe that there is another approach that you can use in video games or experiences like this, and turn this desire for reward inside. And this is something what can work on theater, because you don't really need numbers. You know if you did your part in a play well. So you go from very first rehearsal with your colleagues, no matter if they are digital or real life friends. You go through all rehearsals with the director, then you go to the stage and then make your performance, and you know if you did well. Of course, there is an audience and you can see it somehow, but this is not numerical reward. This is not even reward said by words. It's simply just the final stage, but you are enjoying. You're supposed to enjoy the process of producing a play and then staying on stage itself. So back to the slide. In realistic mode, you really need to go from very first reading rehearsal through other stage rehearsals and to the final costume rehearsal and then to the premiere. With the director, you really need to know the play and then play in front of the audience. And then you can still you are free in what you can do on the stage, but you need to follow the script to cooperate with others to make a good show for the people. It's actually very tough to do, because other digital players need to react somehow to your small faults, like when you are not exactly on time or when you make a small change in a text, or when you forget the text completely, and they need to react somehow like human beings to these your faults. Also, we need to implement speech-to-text recognition, but actually the easiest part from everything what we need to solve. Yeah. So this is the idea. This is the greater vision of our project, and now I show you a small teaser video that's supposed to visualize what I just trying to explain. So this was teaser video from a prototype that I was talking about. That you can try it somewhere here in the building. It's a last scene from Hamlet, from Shakespeare's Hamlet, with the fighting scene fighting scene beginning and the death of almost everybody ending. It is in English. We used a second folio, what means that it's very old English, and we did it in Prague, what was a bit a complication for us. And this is a second half of my speech where I will explain how we approach the project. At the beginning, we needed to decide if we approach it as a standard game production or if we try something else. By standard game production mean that we are doing this like sort of theater game for the player to entertain him as much as possible, simply to like play on him. That we in that case we would needed to adjust Shakespeare's script that everybody is playing not for audience but for the player that is wearing headset, and this is a very different approach from what we finally did. And the second approach is that we do it as a standard theater production, but we capture it and let a user or a player step inside. So we tried this second approach because it was a bit experimental, and I think that it is last time that I had a chance to do something like this, because the prototype should show the proof of concept to the investor and to the people and to us, because we didn't know at the beginning if it can works with people. So we created our own theater production. We hired director, dramaturgist, choreographer, and English-speaking actors that actually are living in Prague. So it is mostly from expats that are currently living in Prague, and we rehearse it, or we produce it as a regular theater. So we have some rehearsals. We have 3-day rehearsals in one row. Then 4th day we came to motion capture studio, where we capture all movements and also voiceovers. So we started with the regular. It's some photo from first rehearsal. Then we came to the motion capture studio, and the game is done. We make a 3D models of theater, of course, and then all actors. For the actors, we didn't use real faces. We created our own characters with the designer. But all acting and all voices are from real actors. So when we make a production, we came to the motion capture studio, and actors played the game. The play in one row. All 6 minutes, and they were on this motion capture stage together. What is quite exceptional, because usually when you are doing motion capture for video game, you usually split it into smaller scenes. You make like 10-15 seconds or maybe 1 minute shot, and you usually use as minimum actors in one time as you can, because it because it usually causes some troubles to have more people on one stage, and I explain why. But I wanted to have them. If I wanted to save the energy that theater production has, I really needed to have them together and play it in one row, because when I shoot it separately and then I combine it in Motion Builder, that's the process that is usually used in video game production, that I really can lost lots of the energy from the theater. But it caused some troubles. First, when you actors, you have sorry. I'm not sure if you are familiar with motion capture technology, so I make some brief sum up. There are two kinds of motion captures. One is visual motion capture, where you have cameras around the stage. Then you have these weird black suits with dots that are actually reflective. So when you are moving, the cameras are tracking the dots, and then they are trying to reconstruct the movement inside the computer. And the second one is based on inertial sensors that knows their initial position, and then they know the difference between previous position. In the first case, it's very easy to cover the dots in front of the cameras so they don't see it, and it makes some errors in the movement. But it is very precise. It is, at the moment, it is still most precise motion capture, and it is used in Hollywood movies and in AAA games. The second one, on the contrary, is good that you don't really need to see the sensors, these inertial sensors. So you can wear, for example, costumes over them. What is good in my case, because actors are playing differently when they wear costumes and when standing on the stage and playing for the audience. And they are playing differently when they are in this weird science fiction environment of motion capture studio in really weird suits. But motion sensors, as they are based on cumulating differences between previous positions, they are also cumulating errors. So after few minutes, the position of the sensors can be like 1 meter from where it should be. So we used the first approach, the motion capture that is based on cameras and these reflective dots. We also track fingers, what is very it's actually more difficult, and you need more expensive hardware, but it's much easier to cover it. And actors were covered themselves, and they were covered also by props, and they are lying on the ground, so they cover everything what is on the ground and so on. Also, the last scene from Hamlet is the fighting scene, so this very action. So they are also losing these dots. As I mentioned, my goal was to make it as much realistic as possible. So I also wanted to record voiceovers during the motion capture, what again is something what you are usually not do in video games, and maybe not even in movies. But I didn't want it end up with movements that are not much related to voiceovers, because even if you are, if you do greatest dubbing on the world, it is still something that is a little bit artificial. So we were recording all players. We made it in one row, and I forgot to mention it that you, when you capture 6-minute motion capture with 6 actors, and you are tracking also fingers. This is lots of data, and it's another complication when you are cleaning the data and when you are manipulating with them. But yeah, you need to watch lots of things. In that case, that's there is some minimal props on the stage, and we also need to instruct actors not to do some things. There is one example where when you are standing with the hands behind, you usually have them like this. What means that you cover the dots that are on hands. So we instructed actors in details to do things like this, because in that case we see them, see the dots, and later in Motion Builder or another software we simply can turn hands in the right position. So we gave them lots of instruction. We gave lots of instruction to the director to let her know what we are able technologically to do, or and what we are not able to do. And on the next video, there's what they what they really did. As a producer, I gave them a freedom, so I didn't touch it later, because the theater was at the first place, but they simply forget all instructions. And please watch especially the actors that are in second plane.
She swoons to see the bleed.
No, the drink. Oh, my dear Hamlet, the drink.
Oh, lock the doors! Treachery! Seek it out!
It is here, Hamlet. Hamlet, thou art slain. The treacherous instrument is in thy hand. Unbaited and envenomed, the foul practice hath turned itself on me, lo, here I lie. I can no more be king, the king's to blame.
So they literally did everything what we wanted them or instructed them not to do. They were touching a lot, they were manipulating with like everything, so they were covering almost all spots. So this very part was quite complicated to reconstruct later in a computer. So this was just motion capture for body movements, but we need to solve somehow facial animations. And again, there are two approaches for making facial animations in video games and movies. One approach is to put same dots on, as they are on body, but much smaller on the face, and capture them, and then make a rig like skinning for the face with some points that you can move, and then try to reconstruct movements of these points from the captured data. It is most realistic, but also most demanding on computational power of the computers. So we choose a second approach that is based on voice analysis, where you analyze voiceover for phonemes, and you make a morpheme of the face of an actor for each phoneme, and then blend those shapes based on the voice analysis. On the next video, I will show you how it looks when you reconstruct just the lip sync, just the lips movement based on voice analysis.
Give me your pardon, sir. I've done you wrong. What I have done, I here proclaim was madness. If Hamlet from himself be taken away, and when he's not himself, does wrong Laertes, then Hamlet does it not. Hamlet denies it. Who does it then? Is madness? If it be so, Hamlet is of the faction that is wronged. His madness is poor Hamlet's enemy. I do embrace it freely.
Okay, there is this thing in 3D animation called Uncanny Valley. That basically means that you are increasing realisticness of a character, realism of a character, and realism of the character really grow up. Then at some point it drop down and again grow up. And the drop down is uncanny valley. That's usually, actually, there are theories that are trying to explain this, and very different. And one of them is that there is no relation between animation of lower part of your face, of 3D character face, and the upper part. That is what you saw on this video. So we also needed to make a morphemes for emotion expressions, then make eyeball movement and the blinking, and then we combine this with body movement, and now I show you how the final product.
I'll be your foil, Laertes. In mine ignorance, skilled like a star in the darkest night, stick fiery off in thee.
You mock me, sir.
No, by this hand.
Horatio, give them the foils.
So that is what you see if you try it here. That's a prototype captured from the displays of the player, and so that's it. In addition to video games, I think that I did it as a video game because I can't help myself, because most of my productive life I was doing video games. But I believe that this technology, and especially theater, has more usage. For example, we can use it to capture and make a conservation of some famous theater plays for future generations. It's actually a problem how to conserve theater play, because the theater is something what is happen on plays with living actors, with the auditory, with the atmosphere. Someone calls it energy that is flowing between audience and the theater. But the point is that when you take your camera and you shoot a theater play, that's another kind of art. It is not original a theater. And I know that the technology is not mature enough, and our processes is not mature enough, but in the future I think that we can use this technology to capture good plays and make them available also for future generations. Also, theater is something what is very specific to every culture, to every nation. it's most probably a very last thing that is untouched much by globalization, and it could be very nice to see how theater looks like, not just on the other side of the world, like those Chinese or Japanese, I don't know, theater plays, but we actually don't know how theater looks like abroad in Germany. It's a very different thing. The movie may be the same, very easy to understand for us, but the theater is very specific, and it can be nice to conserve it, to capture it, and make it available to other people around the world. We can use it as a standalone video game that is distributed through standard channels like Steam, but we can also use it in arcade rooms where you can, like those escape rooms where you play with your friends, but you can go through the arcade room, take VR headsets and try to play some famous play with your friends. What give us the chance to use most up-to-date hardware, hardware that is very expensive and you usually can't afford it for your home usage. We have also very good response from schools, so I think that install it in schools could be very good, and the educational purposes are like how to say it. It simply can be used for educational purposes, and we have very good response from schools, and we have very good response from teenagers that usually usually don't want to go to the theater because it is probably not cool enough. They may come to the theater later when they grew up, but not when they are on basic schools or high schools. But what is cool is virtual reality, and we experience lots of teenagers that are actually playing Shakespeare, and they make a fun of it. So I think that there is a way how to use it. Yeah, and the last thing is for theater marketing. So that's all from my side, I think. No, there's one more slide. In addition to give you a chance to play your own play or play in some prefabricated plays, we want to add some sort of sandbox where you can make your own stage set from some stuff database or asset database. We want to also create an asset store where other people can make assets that you can later use in your productions. And you can also make some money to put stuff on asset store, and you can share your the final products, like final plays, with others, and they can play it and so on. So we wanted to do more like a sandbox and an environment for creative people where they can play and enjoy it in more creative ways. So now that's all. I think that we have a time for questions if you have some.
If you have any questions, then please raise your hand and I will give you a mic. All right. I think we have time exactly for one question.
Hello, thank you for the presentation. It's a kind of very, how would I say, original idea for a game, if we can call it a game. I would like to ask, what was the first impulse for the whole concept? Like, what was the first? How did you came up with it?
I created this concept in second half of 2016 year. I just finished a game, and then there was this new wave of interest about virtual reality. Virtual reality is not actually new, but the technology is cheap enough now to make it available for home usage. And so I started to think how to deal with it, and I already knew the limitations, the space that you have, the motion sickness, and so on. So I was start thinking how to combine the idea that I was talking about at the beginning, that virtuality is here to let you live another lives, and how to combine it with those limitations. So I came up with theater, because in theater there's a like simulator of some profession, very beautiful profession where you can live more lives on the stage, and it also fulfill the requirements for the limitation, because you have limited space on the stage where you can move, and you can do cuts. For example, if you want to do it as a movie, you can do cuts, you can do camera zooms, you can do almost anything, but you can simulate life.
All right, thank you, Jindřich.